Hello, guys, and welcome to the Stormkeep. My name is Bergonk, and today I am joined by.
Hey, it's Daniel.
And it's Paul.
Today, we're going to be discussing the new Warcry warband from Nightmare Quest, the Stormcast Questor Soulsworn.
Before we get started, let's talk about our sponsor, Kaiju Gaming Lounge. Kaiju Gaming Lounge has been the sponsor for the Stormkeep for a while now, and they sponsor our painting contest. They give us all the prizes that allow us to do nearly monthly painting contests, which are a great deal of fun. They also make our merch and help ship it around. So they make these fancy rangefinders you can see here on screen. They have a 7-inch marker and a 9-inch marker. These come in handy when you're using units like Annihilators with the Lord Imperator to deep strike 7 inches away, or if you're like me and you've been playing Seraphon lately, you can use Dracothian's Tail with the Space Folder Staff to drop units 7 inches away, and that's a very cool looking way to do that. They also make a number of different gaming aids, so check out their store at kaijugaminglounge.com, and you can use code STORMKEEP for 15% off. Okay, let's take a look at the Warscroll for Questor and Soulsworn. That's a fun sentence. Pretty standard stat line, right? 3 wounds apiece, 5-inch move, 3 up save. We've seen a lot of this in Stormcast Eternals before. That's a typical Paladin stat line. Their melee attacks are also pretty typical for Paladins. 3 attacks, 3s rend 1-2 damage. You're looking at about 6 damage per model with relatively good accuracy. Like, that's standard accuracy. Interestingly, this unit can bring a Knight Relictor, which can automatically chant Translocation, and that Translocation isn't a prayer, so you can do this and translocate a different unit in the same turn. So that's pretty dang cool. And also, this translocation is in the hero phase, not like in the movement phase like a lot of other teleport abilities. They can't move after teleporting, of course, like most times. And the secret spice here is that when they're contesting an objective wholly outside their own territory, they count as 3 models. This is a squad of 6. You can't reinforce them, so there's no way to bring 12 or 18 in a single unit. But look, you're looking at 18 wounds on a 3-up. That counts as 18 models on an objective. This is a really, really interesting niche for a Stormcast unit to take. Like Mergonk said, you can currently get them in Warcry Nightmare Quest, and they will likely get released separately on their own at some point. We have no information on that, but every other warband has been released separately, so it stands to reason this one will as well. 6 models in the unit for 250 points, and they are single. And I don't think they're unique, right? They don't have the unique tag. So just
They
They
do
single.
don't.
have unique. No, they say,
They do.
but not unique.
Oh, yeah, because you can't
Yeah.
reinforce them. My bad. But
Yeah.
they don't have single.
Yeah, so you can bring multiples in a list, which is cool. So let's look at pros and cons. 18 wounds on a 3-up save. That's good, right? But we've got lots of units that are like that. Like that's Stormdrake Guard. Stormdrake Guard are 18 wounds for 2 models on a 3-up save. The difference here is that this unit is 250 points instead of 340 like the Stormdrakes. So you're getting Stormdrake durability for 90 points less. That's really good. That scales well with wards. Like, I'm sure people have seen reinforced drakes be a nightmare for opponents to chew through when they drop a Gardas nearby. But unlike drakes, you can also revive these guys with stuff like Andrasta and the Night Vexillor banner. There's a lot more synergy packed into it. Their melee damage is good. 38 max damage on 3s rend 1. That's good. Like, that's really good. For reference, 3 Grand Hammers are 30 max damage on 3s rend 2. So while the Grand Hammers are more accurate and they also get to do charge mortal wounds, their maximum damage is lower. They also have 2-inch range on the Questors, which allows them to always fight in most positions. Since they're a squad of 6, it's really easy to get everybody in range. So the way I envision this unit being played is it's a tough anvil unit, so you can set it down on your front line and it can reliably survive. You can start reviving stuff if you have Andrasta, and once per game, it can just teleport around. And I think that's a pretty cool niche. It's like, what if Vanguard Hunters were tougher and punchier? And that's basically what Questors are. But it goes further, right? Because they have Thunderstrike keyword. That means if you use a Lord Imperator with Guided by Lightning, you can deploy them 7 inches away from an enemy, and you can measure that distance using our rangefinders, as mentioned in the advertisement earlier. Yeah, that's a really cool niche. Like, compare them to something like Grand Hammers, and they start to look as an alternative drop. So instead of having 2 damaging drops coming down, like Grand Hammers turn 1, Grand Hammers turn 2, you could do like Questors turn 1 and then Grand Hammers turn 2. And the Questors present this different kind of threat. Still high damage, but way higher durability, like double the wound count of Grand Hammers, and also counting as triple the number of models. Or, no, more, 6 times the number of models, right? 18 versus 3.
6 times, yeah, 6 times, it's like
Yeah.
6 times 3, so 3 times the number of models. And so, yeah, you can snipe objectives with a 7-inch drop and charging like a screen or something.
Hmm. Yeah, it's really, really good. Charging 7 inches from reserve, even without a +1, you have with a reroll from a command point, you have about an 82% chance you can destroy an enemy. Like these guys are good attackers. They're not super punchy, but they can kill most things with a 4-up save. They can destroy them and then capture that objective.
Mhm.
That's a cool way to use this unit. It's like a Grand Hammer, but then it does something besides just die, right? Like every time we use Grand Hammers, it's like, oh, okay, we're going to charge, we're going to delete whenever we hit, and then the unit just dies. Your opponent does have to waste time doing that, and that's a tactical win. But this unit's different because it can stick around. And if it lives, it just teleports away to safety if it needs to, right? Like that's really cool.
Actually, yeah, like it's the self built-in teleport is really, really cool because um we've said on this channel for a while that Stormkeep just isn't quite there because it triggers too late. If you had 1 or 2, even 2 sometimes of these units for turns 1 and 2 to just go out there and take objectives against all odds to give your Redeemers time to charge up till round 3, it's not a bad plan. I think it's worth testing, I think at least.
Yeah, and it's also a translocate that doesn't take up your translocate and doesn't require a dice roll. There's no randomness involved here.
Mhm.
So these are all really good things, and it's it's starting to make me wish that translocate was just an ability Stormcast used in the hero phase instead of a prayer. Like we just did it,
Like, you mean last season's Dracothian's Tale? Yeah, I would like that. Right? Sorry, Starborn. Last season's Starborn.
like first edition Seraphon, where they could just teleport in the hero phase.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would very much enjoy.
Around a node, like a priest. Yep, I would like that.
Yeah. So downsides. There are downsides. There's always pros and cons to every unit. Some more than others. But they are slow. If they're not teleporting or dropping into play, with especially with the Lord Imperator, they're only moving 5 inches a turn. There's no run and charge. There's no reroll charges. There's no bonuses to run and charge, which is becoming a more and more popular thing on Warscrolls these days. They don't have banners or musicians to give them bonuses. If you're only dropping them in 9 inches away, like if you're using them as an ally or not using a Lord Imperator, a 9-inch charge is unreliable. Even with a reroll, it's a coin flip at best. And if it fails, this unit is kind of left out in the middle of nowhere, pretty much doing nothing useful because everybody knows how to play against 9-inch teleports these days. They only count as 3 models while they're on objectives wholly outside your territory. So if you're playing a map that has objectives on the borders of territories, that doesn't work there. It's only on objectives that are not in your territory at all. And that's pretty few this season, right? There's not a lot of battle plans that have a lot of objectives wholly outside your territory. And it's pretty easy to screen out like 1 or 2 of these. You just put 1 model in the middle of an objective, and then you can't teleport within 9 inches, and then your opponent's hoping to have Hail Mary plays. It's not ideal. They're only rend 1, which means they can struggle to take down armored targets. They're very good against stuff with like 5-up saves, ideally 4-up saves sometimes. Anything with a 3-up save you just want to avoid. You're not going to deal significant damage to them. They're also damage 2, which means if you have a -1 damage effect like Coalesced or Night Haunt or Ossiarch Bone Reapers with their Petrifex Elite, these guys really suffer. They go down from 36 down to 18 max damage, which is very poor for their cost. Speaking of their cost, they're 250 points and they're not battle line. And going into list construction, that can be difficult to fit into lists. One of the reasons we use Knights Excelsior and why we rate it as highly as we do is because it makes Grand Hammer's battle line, and that makes these lists very efficient and smooth and just run really well. So you can skip, wasting points on extra units. But these guys never have that option. So your list is going to be a little bit bloated just by taking them. Because they're a 6-model unit, they can lose models to Battle Shock. And even though they are Bravery 8, I believe, they can still lose models to things like Horror Gas, Bleeding Icon, all of these effects that stop you from using Inspiring Presence, and then also make D3 additional models flee. It's pretty backbreaking. Also, the biggest weakness here, and I know we mentioned this, but it really needs to be overstated even, they're single and they can't be reinforced. So this unit is always doing exactly what it's doing, never more, never less. And it really feels like this unit has such a great profile, and if you could reinforce it, it would be a monster. But it's because it can't be reinforced. I think that's really limiting its power here. So I'm gonna stick it in the B tier. This is a unit we consider to be good and also viable in competitive games. It might require a little bit more work than an A tier and S tier unit, and maybe it just needs a bit of a point cut in order to reach that higher. Like I think A tier is where every unit should try to be, because if they're a little bit too strong and they end up in S tier, that's okay. If they're a little bit too weak, they end up in B tier, and that's okay. But yeah, B tier is pretty appropriate for these guys, I think. What do you guys think?
Yeah, they're fine, right? They're not. They are doing something a little bit different, and they're bringing a new niche, which is good. That I think is giving a lot of their B tier rating for me personally, just because I think 250 points is quite a lot for these guys. I'd probably take them at 230. It'd be a lot more competitive for me, just because the like kind of 200 point slot has stuff like Chaos Warriors, Source Warriors, all these other warrior units that are a little more elite than well, these are a little more elite than them, but they're around the paladin tier, but yet our paladins are like 220, right?
Yeah. Well,
Retributors are 210. It just seems to be a little, they definitely they move a bit quicker. They've got inbuilt mobility, which is great. You don't have to sacrifice a translocate on them. They can be, used with the Lord Imperator, which that's an issue. That's a separate issue with him. Hopefully that gets, somewhat remedied soon. So they do have upsides. I 100% think they should be worth more than like Retributors, for example. They shouldn't be 210. They shouldn't be 200. But 250 is just a bit much to fit them in lists to be extremely relevant.
yeah.
B
Stormcast
tier
lists are
though,
running pretty tight these days as it is. So a 250
yeah,
point unit in an army that feels like it's too overpriced as it is, it's a bit much.
I think
Yeah, I would have liked it just below our hammer units, like 10 points below
yeah,
elevators. Like
that's
I
what I'm
think that
thinking is
puts them at a
230.
very interesting spot where you're getting up damage for utility.
Yep, 100%. The red one feels super tough. It's mostly the points. The red one is fine at 230. It just seems a little odd in the in this economy, right?
Hmm.
It
Yeah,
seems like this unit.
yeah.
I think it would have been
We
cool if there was a rule here that, like, if you didn't have the Knight Reliquary, you could take a different build, because there are 2 different builds for each model in this unit. And if
Mhm.
the other build could be something like once per game, give your unit rend 1 this turn, or rend 2, like an additional rend.
Or imagine if they had a
Yeah,
chosen
or
rule
let
where they
this
just
unit
fought twice.
pray. I don't know why it's such a hard deal. There's plenty of warbands out there that do other like interesting things like that. Like
Gabapalooza is literally a wizard unit.
Yeah.
yeah, it's like, and you look at the new FAC one that's just turning off monsters rampages. It has recursion. It benefits from the army's things. Like this benefits from nothing. It doesn't have any other redeemer,
Yep.
paladin, Justicia or whatever
It's just the Thunderstrike
keywords.
keyword.
Yep, it has none of the yeah, it's not even a hero despite literally having a hero lead it. So it's not a priest or anything.
Maybe Final
Yeah,
Thunderstrike.
They could use Final Thunderstrike. Yeah, they've got more wounds. They've got a decent wound efficiency.
Yeah, you
It
roll
is
24 dice and every 5 up is immortal.
it's it is there. No, I think like especially when I think the comparison to like warrior units is quite apt in that they don't have anything you can really buff them with, right? Not that you're really going to be taking, if you listen to our Seraphon review, a ton of Saurus warriors and just munching people. They're still like they can get some decent buffs. And in our army, I mean, what are you going to get? Like celestial blades? You might get like blessed weapons, I guess. It's not
plus
something you're
yeah,
really going
sure.
to invest in. It's hard to scale this unit with
not
damage.
not needing investment is a good thing, though, right? If units
Yeah,
are independently good on their own, that's a good thing. Like, we rate Dracolines highly because they don't need any other support. They bring their own support. They reroll charges, so you don't need CP for that. They bring their own +1 to wound. They also bring it unbind. Like, self-sufficient units are good, and I think a lot more of that should be done in Stormcast. Like, but
True, but like I feel like if there was another way other than Gardas to get a 5-up ward, I feel like I would really like that on this unit.
for sure,
Like
yeah, this unit would be very cool
like
for sure.
just like a prayer, a spell, a command trait, anything that gives these guys a 5-up ward, so I can try them out in Hammers of Sigmar,
I'd be down for that.
or Celestial Vindicators. Sorry, not Astral Templars or Celestial Vindicators or something.
Dan, you mentioned
Yeah,
that these guys are comparable to units like Source Warriors and Chaos Warriors and Khorne's Blood Warriors, and I think that's a great comparison,
Mhm.
because those units are all 20 wounds on a 3-up save. There's conditions for the Source Warriors, but basically they're 20 wounds on a 3-up save. But all of those units are way lower damage than this unit. They're usually 2 attacks a model, sometimes 3. I think with Blood Warriors, but usually like 3s rend 1 damage, right? So the max 20 damage for about the same point cost. It's not too far off. These guys are 38 damage at 3s, 3s,
Yeah.
1. So they're way higher damage than these other units. And they also count as way more models when they're contesting objectives outside territory. So like, this is a cool design. It feels like a Stormcast spin on Chaos Warriors, which is ironic, but on Saurus Warriors and Blood Warriors, like that unit type. And I really like it. I
I
it
think they might be
signals
experimenting with objective count. Like
Yeah,
this
the
LC
objective
thing
count thing
that
is
we're seeing in
cool.
40k.
yeah.
They might be experimenting with it because one of the biggest problems we have is we almost always prefer damage to bodies because we can't really outnumber anyone.
Yeah, we have to leverage
So for
ourselves.
us, destroying models is the only way to really take up space on objectives.
Mhm.
But if you sort of change the math there and give every unit and every model an objective count stat, then it makes elite armies more tenable in that sense.
If there's going to be an army besides ogres that counts as more models on an objective, it
should
ought to be
us.
Stormcast. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I do think, gosh, that rule, as always, like Stormcast rules, there's like a small tweak. It should be only counts as 3 models on objectives that aren't wholly inside our territory. That way that they're usable on more maps.
On the border
'Cause-
ones, yeah.
Yeah, the border ones, that's really tough. And it's all these little things.
That's why you run Stormkeep, right? Because that's what that's for. So the idea is you have redeemers on those, and then these guys go out and get everything else.
I think we can all agree this is a better written Warscroll than anything else in our book. Like in terms of efficiency, in
Maybe
terms
not
of
Dragon.
interest. It's not exciting. It feels like Stormdrake Guard. It feels like the people who wrote the Stormdrake Guard one wrote this one too.
Yep,
Mhm.
I definitely.
It is a very I will say mechanics wise, like sure, there's a bits missing, but those bits are more missing from our book, not this unit. I think this unit is
Yes.
very interesting. If they continue on this path on writing interesting, cool things for us that actually work, I think we're in for a good spot.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
We're trending in a good direction. After Domiton, Stormcoven, and this, I'm liking the
Mhm.
direction we're going with Stormcast. I can't wait to see what happens with them in Harbingers. All right, so we were all very excited about building lists for this unit. We weren't at first, right? We kind of had to talk about it and be like, well, hold on, we can actually do this with this unit, and we can take existing lists and we can add this unit, and we can build new unit lists. So I think we've got 4 lists prepared for this. And Mergonk, this first one is yours, with a reference I don't understand because I'm too old, I guess.
Yeah, because it's off of my Aliana Grande list. This is for those of you who recognize this reference, please put it in the comments to let Paul know. He checks our comment section quite often. Anyway, so it starts off with a Warlord Battalion, a Lord Imperative because you like those 7-inch drops, a Lord Relic for Translocation and Telemaster, and a Vexillor with Stubborn as a Rhinox. Why Vexillor? Because I really have grown to like comets and their hero removing capability. Then I start with a Sharpshooters Battalion with Judicators from Battle Line, Vanguard Raptors, 2 units of 3. This list is Knights Excelsior, so my other battle line will be Annihilators with Meteoric, Grand Hammers. Actually, am I missing a battle line here? And then I have Vanquishers for my last battle line. And then I have some Aether Wings to give the Vanguard Raptors +1 to hit in the hero phase should I need it. And I have another Knight Vexillor, the Meteoric Standard, and then I have the Everblaze Comet. The Imperative is going to be casting that with Master of Magic and the Arcane Tome. Thanks to the recent Arcane Tome nerf. And yeah, this is basically an Aliena Grande. The idea is simple. Most lists that you fight will give you turn 1 because your main stuff is going to be in reserves. And you're just going to bomb them with about 3d3 mortal wounds at least on key things like support heroes, shooting units, things like that. Screens even, because that 3d3 can pretty easily remove a lot of the screen and get, put you in position for a good Annihilator drop.
Yeah, trigger some Battle Shock.
Mm-hmm. And then the idea is, like Paul mentioned earlier, we can go first with the Questor Soulsworn because that can be in a position to kill something and take an objective away from your opponent. And if you get and then the next turn, if the Questor Soulsworn survives, you can teleport out of there to another objective, or just another place on the battlefield entirely. Raptors and Judicators provide shooting support. The second unit of Annihilators, the Meteor Grand Hammers, is for a secondary hammer support. And Vanquishers can just be a screen, or they can just go into a screen early on if you don't want to make a commitment to your Questor or Annihilator drop that soon. So yeah, just it's a bit of Aliena Grande mixed with Comet Fall, basically.
It's pretty cool.
It actually solves a key
Cool,
weakness of that list, which is the inability to take objectives because you're such an elite army. So Questor Soulsworn gives you a really unique utility slot in this list.
Yeah, having played a lot of Nihilana myself, I really like how, because oftentimes you have to include a fast unit to expand and take territory, and
Yeah.
sometimes those fast units you take like a chariot, you're not really gonna contest an objective against a random 20 zombies that's sitting somewhere.
Nope. And bounty hunters being gone, you either need to kill that unit, which isn't going to happen, but you could reduce those zombies or skeletons enough to where your 18 model loot count might actually matter.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that a lot, and they don't take up a translocate always. I mean, you can, right? So you can save that
Yeah,
translocate that they
yeah, I
have.
can save that translocate for something else. That's really awesome.
Yeah, super versatile here. I like that a lot.
This is going to catch some people off guard. They're going to really underestimate just how much damage Vexilor's long strikes, or not damage as in like you're not going to wipe out 60 zombies, right? But you're going to kill every key piece on the battlefield turn one. And then you're just going to grind it out with Questors, and you're going to drop in Grand Hammers to finish off bigger targets.
Yep. I can see a lot of like GC heavy lists getting caught off guard with this. Like if I can manage to go first against, because this list I believe is it's quite a lot of drops. I think it's like 10 drops.
9 drops.
Assume yeah, 9 drops. So like there's a chance they could go first, but most of my good stuff will be protected, either behind sparing terrain or behind the finest hour or in reserves and signs of the storm. So chances are they'll let you go first, and if they do, you can really decimate GCs. Like against KO, I could probably kill all their admirals and either chemists starting one of those.
Yeah. No, it looks good, man. This is kind of like the first thought of using the Soulsworn is kind of just replacing a Grand Hammer unit in this Grand Hammer list, right? Yeah, pretty solid. I don't know if you even need the Lord Relictor here anymore, honestly. Like, you give Tunnel Master to some other hero.
Could be. I basically put him in because a lot of this list will revolve around teleporting my Vanguard Raptors or teleporting an Aether Wings for Thunder, or teleporting Vanguard Raptors or Aether Wings for a turn 1 Thunderbolt volley.
Yeah.
The other thing I like doing is because depending on how your slots for Scions versus things on the battlefield works out, I might have to start with the Vexilor on the board and then teleport him into a range for a properly placed comet. Because that comet has a range. I think it's 24 inches. So.
Yeah, it's a huge range. Yep.
Which helps with the Questor Soulsworn drop, because you can also use a Knight Vexilor in position to make them innately reroll charges without a CP.
Yeah, that is nice. Right on. Well, I came up with a very similar concept. Whenever we talk Grand Hammers, there's 2 different kinds. There's the kind that goes into Knights Excelsior to get the battle line, and then there's the kind that goes Astral Templars to make your units immune to stuff like Stomp, because when you have a 1 in 3 chance of just losing a Grand Hammer, and that's just awful. So I explored that concept again here with Astral Templars. I called this list the Questor drop. I went with Warlord and Sharpshooters, just as you did. I went with the extra call for aid instead of the extra aspect of the champion. Hero loadout's a bit different. I didn't go for the Knight Vexilors. Instead, I went with Imperatant, a Knight Incantor, and a Lord Veritant, because the points just worked out. I didn't have points for a Lord Relictor. But the Lord Veritant's kind of interesting because he's 8 wounds instead of 6. He is a Lord, so he does keep all the bonus range. But his base is actually bigger than the Lord Relictor because he's got the Gryph-hound next to him. And I found that really does come in handy. That extra, 2 inches in each direction really does help. There's the Questor Soulsworn in there and the Warlord Battalion. In Sharpshooters, I've got 10 Judicators, 5 Vanquishers just to fill it out, and then 3 Vanguard Raptors. And then just sitting out on their own, I actually don't want them in any kind of battalion. I would prefer to have more drops with this style. I've got 5 Vanquishers, 3 Annihilators with Grand Hammers, and 3 Dracolines. So the main differences here is instead of getting the Meteor package, I go for a bit more sustained damage. I like the Evocators on Dracolines to be this mid-board bully that can just play a side of the table by itself. As long as your opponent doesn't throw anything too heavy into it, they can live through most things and kill their way through them. The Raptors, the Questors, the Vanquishers, all this stuff kind of works in a different side of the table. And Grand Hammers being immune to Rampages is awesome. Anytime you play against Sylvaneth, you're just going to have the best day ever. The Vanquishers here could be swapped out for Vanguard Hunters. Evocators could be swapped out for more Raptors if you want more long-range shooting power. There's a lot of choices, a lot of directions you can go with this.
Yeah, I like it. I've always liked the 10 crossbow, 3 long strike combo in Sharpshooters for this season. It's actually very comfy.
Yeah, it doesn't feel great shooting into heroes trying to hit on 4s with long strikes, like if you don't have Aether Wings, but maybe some point changes will help with that.
Yeah.
All right, Dan, this one is yours. Take us away.
Yeah. So I was looking at them, and the Questor Soulsworn are a nice way to hold some objectives, have a teleporting unit, still even without a Relictor. And it's funny because I hadn't put a priest in this list yet. This is a Dueling Dragons variant because of the new unit calling questing dragons, and obviously running Hallowed Knights, of course, for the dragons. Call for aid to go ahead and get those vanquishers back. The usual thing you'd expect. Gardas, Castellan, same thing. 4 Stormdrake Guard, 10 Judicators with crossbows, vanquishers to fill out the battle line. So a bit of a difference, departure from before, is the Questors. We add them in here so they can go ahead and take up objective space a little better. They're able to teleport themselves. Sometimes this list, you have a little bit of trouble getting around. The Stormdrake Guard generally have to be going out and taking care of problem units, uh, blocking zones out of the board. So that Questor unit can get themselves around and rather than auto running 6, they can take an objective on some spot, or if you're playing on Jaws of Gallet or a similar map where objectives get taken or eaten up by the ground, if as it were, like if you're facing another opponent and they take your objective, you can just teleport to another side. And most of the time, you don't really need much more mobility than that. Sometimes I have like Dracolians in this spot to fulfill a similar purpose, but you know I'm not always using all the movement of Dracolians, and that one teleport can be a lot more useful. And the other addition is the Lord Veridin, and instead of having, for similar reasons that Paul talked about, he's actually really great unit for this niche particularly. He fits at exactly 2,000 points. I'd actually put Divine Light, and that gives me it's able to buff all of my hammers in the list. So Stormdrake Guard and Judicators with crossbows, I can't use Blessed Weapons and crossbows. But if I, Divine Light something, I've got an 18-inch regular within range, not wholly within, from the Verident, who has a bigger base because of the Gryph-hound,
Hmm.
and Tunnel Master to make sure you get around. I'm rerolling ones on attacks versus a unit, and generally it's one problem unit that I need to get some more damage into, especially if it's like 60 zombies. We've got Soulblight back in the meta. I've got to start worrying about that more. That's going to help the crossbows and dragons and the Soulsworn, the Questors, get more of that mass volume of attacks that we talked about. That they have such a much higher damage ceiling than you'd expect at 38. On 3s and 3s. If you get over to 2s and you're rerolling 1s, you're going to get a lot more of those hits through, and that's going to give you a lot better chances of those 3s to wound. You're not getting a triumph here, but still a lot better options. So really like how that comes together. I think this is a pretty decent option.
Yeah, unlike Dracolines, which could just take this spot instead of the Questors count as a lot more models. Like minimum, they count as 6,
Mm-hmm.
whereas Dracolines maximum count as 6. Um, and like you said, you don't always use the full movement on the Dracolines. A teleport from one side of the board to the other can be tactically more useful. Like it really just depends on the rest of your list. Since you've got Stormdrake Guard here as your primary hammer, you don't have something slower like Dracoths or even Retributors. Those are fast enough, let's say, that you don't need another fast hammer unit.
Yep. And generally, you're keeping those Vanquishers in Scions, at least one set. You're not using to screen, because the Stormdrake Guard are kind of screen and hammer. They're an anvil and hammer at once. So I'm not oftentimes keeping Vanquishers up even to turn 3, just to drop. So this opens me up to have better screening, because the Soulsworn can go ahead and teleport as well. So just more options to the list, which is very cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, I like the more mobility. It's really
Mhm.
cool.
yeah, mobility
Yeah,
versus
mobility
speed
instead
is
of
a
speed.
yeah, constant battle for us. I like the Guard of Steel Soul with the Questors. He gives them an effective 9 wounds extra, which I really like. And I'm going to segue into my next list, if you don't mind.
Oh yeah.
This is called Hallowed Meat because there's an archetype going around for lists these days where people just bring as many wounds as possible with 3-up saves. You've seen it with Slaves to Darkness. You've seen it with Khorne. People are spamming Blood Warriors. You've seen it with, I'm sure you'll see it with Coalesced and Saurus Warriors, or even Starborn Saurus Warriors. So let's try to do it with Stormcast too. Hallowed Knights, Scions of the Storm, Call for Aid. Pretty straightforward. This is trying to use 2 units of Questors, and that's 500 points of your list taken up right there. That's backed up by both Gardas and Andrasta, so not only will all of that have a 5-up ward, but you will be reviving a Questor every single turn, unless they get wiped out. And then the rest of the list is just trying to fill that up. 2x5 Vindictors, because more 3-up saves that revive and have a 5-up ward, okay. Small unit Adjudicators, some Evocators on Dracolines, because this list is going to be slow as balls. You definitely need the speed in here. You need mobility more than your previous list, but this one needs the speed. Knight Incantor General with a unit of Questor Soulsworn using that Quicksilver draft combo that we like. He's using Tunnel Master. You can drop the Questor in around him. Any spot those two drop in together, that's a no-go zone for your opponent. They cannot fight into that properly without taking significant losses. And then the Frostheart Phoenix, my beloved Frostheart Phoenix, giving a -1 wound aura on top of all of these wounds with a 5-up ward and revival. People are going to hate fighting against this. And if this list gets into the right position, it's just awful to play against. So many wounds, so much effective health. Oh man, it's gross. And then even if those Vindictors die, you just revive them with Call for Aid. Yeah. We went through a lot of iteration on this, and at first it just had a lot more shooting. And at some point I was like, what if we just didn't have shooting?
We just didn't.
You know? Like, that's a weird thing.
Soulblight does it, right? It's baby elite Virkos.
Yeah, and I think maybe not this season, because right now we have all these objectives that are on borders. But if we get to a season that has objectives like wholly within no man's land in the middle of the board, neither player's territory, this honestly could be good. This is like what Stormkeep is trying to be.
Yeah, I agree. Honestly, I looked at this list initially, like, I was surprised you were running Scions, and I see why. But yeah, I think it does that same role, but slightly with better mobility, I think.
It could be Stormkeep, right? Because if you go Stormkeep, those Vindictors count as 15 on your home objectives, and then the Questors count as 18 on enemy objectives. So that's not a bad choice. But with the Adjudicators being 18-inch range and the Questor, like, you're burning off your Questor teleports early with this, because this doesn't have a priest, and you're using that Tunnel Master to get up there to have the Galatian Command combo. You could run this in Stormkeep, though, for sure. I think I just prefer the tactical utility of Scions always. So yeah, if you're just looking to grind, or if you're just looking for an excuse to play Andrasta finally.
Yeah, I honestly, if I was gonna run something like this, that'd be my first cut as Andrasta.
I mean, when Andrasta first came out, we sort of just always said that her value, same as the Redeemers in Stormkeep, sort of kicks in turn 3, because then she's reviving a lot of value those turns. You can just start doing that turn 1. Who knew, like, that just makes the unit good, you know?
Yeah, as far as models that count for more on objectives,
Yeah, maybe what we do here is you go like Andrasta, Lord Imperatant, and then, you know, drop in a whole bunch of Soulsworn somewhere. One of them 7 inches away, and you drop Andrasta in range, and then you just start reviving as you pin enemies down. I don't know. It's just it's such a unique Warscroll, such a unique combination of things on this Questor Warscroll. But none of it feels too efficient. You know, like, it feels a little clunky right in these lists. You end up with things like 5 Judicators. Like, it's just a.
I mean, that's a book problem, though. Like we said, like, our lists are feeling about 150 to 200 points too short. You know, that's just how it is for now.
That's for sure, and that's what's really keeping this unit, I think, as a B tier as well for me, is that they don't really define lists very well, you know?
Yeah, trying to. I really stretched myself to try to make this concept work. Like, the core concept here was bring 12 Soulsworn in a game, and then what does the rest of the list look like? It's difficult because the battle line slots are not easy to fill. Everything's expensive.
Well, the other sort of issue is, like, nothing in our, like, book is, like, promoting one line of gameplay over another, right? There's nothing that, like, pushes. There's not a single subfaction. Like, maybe Astral Templars sort of does it, and Guard of Steel Soul is basically locked to Hallowed Knights, but there's nothing that says, oh, I really want to try it with this. Like, you know, you look at something like Zombies and Direwolves, you're like, okay, Virkos is clearly the play here. Or like a Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon, and you say, okay, Legion of Blood is clearly the play here. Not getting much. Like we're just
Yeah. Well, that
we're
was kind of.
always
Do you remember
we're
second
sort of
edition
back to
Magong?
basics.
Second
Mm.
edition was like if you wanted to play a shooting unit, you had to play it in anvils because it could double tap.
Yep.
And I was kind of glad when they moved us to third edition and they took away the specific incentive to use specific units and subfactions. Aside from like, some of the Vanguard stuff and Astral Templars, like okay. But the thing is, the units always get balanced around the subfactions that they're in, right? So like you can't make Paladors very good, and then even better in Astral Templars. Instead, what ends up happening is you balance the Paladors as if they were Astral Templars, and then outside of that, they're just worse, right? Like are Deadwalkers worth playing outside of Urkos? Are Blood Knights worth playing outside of Legion of Blood? Not really, right? And that kind of sucks. It's like, well, what if you wanted to play Legion of Night using a big unit of zombies? It's like, well, Urkos might just do it better.
I mean, I think it's for me. It's more of like an interesting combination of not just like subfaction, but like command traits and artifacts that would help push certain builds over others.
Yeah, I'd be okay with that.
Like if I could, like we mentioned about how the changes we want for blessed weapons or the changes we want to command traits. If you had a command trait like Seraphon that allows us to drop something 7 inches away, or a command trait that was essentially staunch defender from last edition, those open up interesting play patterns or different kinds of interesting unique units like this that it opens up more avenues of play for it makes this unit and you can play it like 3 different ways because of the combination of things you take. That's not what I see here. The play is very simple. It's just you translocate them either by themselves or via a hero, and you protect them with whatever defensive buffs you can muster.
Yeah.
That's the play almost every time.
Well, I do like the Thunderstrike. I like that makes this unit multifaceted. If it was just if it didn't have Thunderstrike, I don't think it would be a B tier. I think it would be C or maybe even D.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you everybody for watching. Somehow people are still interested in our channel, so we'll keep making videos. Big thank you to our Patreon supporters and our YouTube members. Your financial support helps keep the channel rolling because this is a hobby on top of a hobby for us. So having the monetary incentive helps it justify all the time that we spend on the podcast and community building and all that stuff. If you think we missed anything about this unit or our analysis is lacking, please leave a comment down below. Ragonk made a joke about how often I check the YouTube comments, and it's not a joke. I check them all the time. I really like reading YouTube comments.
I'll be looking at it. He's like, it's like a week and a half later, and Paul's still responding to somebody, just having a conversation on YouTube comments.
Yeah.
Oh man,
I like it, man. People took the time to write. I'm going to take the time to read.
Well, if you want a little bit more of a direct way to talk to us, not that the YouTube comments, they're greatly appreciated, obviously, for the algorithm gods. Check out our Discord. It's in the description below. And you want to talk to us in our great community, lots of like-minded, great just great analysis, great discussion, really funny people, and we've got some TTS stuff going on, just lots of little things in our Discord. So check us out and keep the conversation going. Check out our battle reports channel. That's my favorite one. See how other people are taking our theory and putting it into practice.
Yeah, and consider supporting us by becoming a member on YouTube or on patreon.com/Stormkeep. Coming up next, we are hard at work on our full reviews for Battletome Seraphon and Battletome Blades of Khorne, and we're also going to be doing a quick review for Soul Blight Gravelords. And then there's more content coming after that. The Harbinger stuff looks really exciting, and we can't wait to start talking about it. So thank you everybody for tuning in. We'll see you in the next one.